Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a stupid neighbor hired a company to bulldoze my garage while I was deployed and he thought he could get away with it. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So for the past 10 years I have lived in a rather quiet neighborhood next to a military base. A base that I visit often to gain assignments. For the last 3 of these 10 years, me and my neighbor have had our fair share of arguments with each other. Barely a couple of days after he moved in, he came knocking on my door saying, "Excuse me, you're gonna have to take down your garage." My new neighbor spoke, a lit cigarette between his lips. "Pardon me? Who are you?" I responded. "Ken, neighbor, owner of the land your garage is on." "I don't think that land is yours. I had the garage built 7 years ago and had a property surveyor come and assess the land surrounding my home to check that I owned it." "Well, your garage nearly connects to my fence. You only own half of that space." "No, I own up to your fence, in the same way that you own up to the fence of your other neighbor." "Absolutely not. You're going to remove that garage," were his parting words before storming off. Obviously, I did not take down my garage, and for the next few years we would constantly bicker over the land. He started using the land as his personal storage, putting lawnmowers and other equipment outside my garage. In retaliation, I started putting them inside my garage, so he stopped that method. There's been windows smashed, spray paint, you name it. To be honest, I don't know why I didn't try to do anything about him sooner. His vandalism was illegal, of course. I guess I just didn't see it as a huge issue and certainly didn't think it would escalate to what it did later. I even had cameras installed all over my property, so I could have reported him, I just didn't bother. Those cameras did come in handy for helping me get justice later on, however. Anyway, as the title of the thread suggests, this all begins when I was sent off for deployment overseas for 7 months. A week before my deployment, me and Ken had another blown-up argument over my garage, which I guess maybe would have been a good indication of what was about to go down. Flash forward the 7 months, I come home to see my garage is nothing but rubble. Said rubble had all been moved, so it was pressed against my house, not crossing the halfway mark between mine and Ken's. I could see my belongings scattered beneath the rubble, most looking broken, and even parts of the wall where the garage was attached were crumbling down. I was furious to say the least, and although it may not seem like it from writing, it also deeply saddened me. I stupidly kept lots of memories from my youth in my garage, memories that were now in a heap of ash and dust. In a fit of rage, I dumped my bags on the floor and stormed over to Ken's house, banging loudly on the door. It was 4 AM, but I didn't care one bit who I woke up. "Who's knocking at 4 in the morning?" I heard Ken yell through the door before he flung it open. "Did you demolish my garage?" I yelled at him. "What? No, of course not," he replied with his hands raised. I momentarily began feeling guilty for my behavior. "Oh, what?" I had someone hired to do it, of course." He smirked down at me. "Why would you do that? That's my property." My previous rage had built back up and I could feel my nails digging into my hands from how strongly I was clenching my fists. "Ha, well, it's not your land, you have no right to it, and I decided I would have to do something about it if you were not going to do it." He shrugged, attempting to hide his smirk but failing miserably. "You horrible man. That is my property. I'm gonna get the cops involved. You won't be smirking like that when this is over." I turned around before I would do something that I would regret, but when he called me a name which I won't repeat here, I turned around and shoved him hard. He staggered backwards a few steps and then jumped back up and started approaching me again, his eyebrows scrunched tightly together. He attempted to punch me, but I easily dodged and pulled his leg out from underneath him, knocking him over. With my military training, it would have been an easy fight, but I didn't want to do anything stupid, so I left it at that, storming away and ignoring any further insults shot my way. The second I got inside, I called the police to report the incident, and they arrived not long later. I showed them the video footage on my cameras of a bulldozer knocking down my garage and watched as the officers glanced towards each other. I had a bad feeling about where this was going. "Look, sir, we appreciate everything you have done for us in our country, but there's not much we can do for you." "What? Why not?" "Ken has a big role in this community. He's a reputable businessman and pays 20% of our gross taxes for the area. Sorry again, but you're going to have to admit defeat on this one." I was astonished by the callous way they treated the situation. I looked over to Ken's house and saw that he was standing at his window with a mug of coffee, his famous monstrous smirk shining over his face. There was no way I was gonna let him get away with this. A couple hours later, when the rest of the world was awake, I began making calls. I reached out to my superior officers at the nearby base and told them the story, being heavy on the fact that the police had been notified but were refusing to act on the crime. My superiors then got in contact with the police personally, mortified by the treatment I was receiving. For the next couple of days I did not hear much, but then some officers from the police department called around again and officially took my statement and began an investigation into Ken. I sent over the video footage of the garage being demolished and handed them the deeds to my property, which lists the measurements of my property, and from what I saw out my window, they began questioning him. "How dare you? Do you have any idea who I am and what I could do? I can get you fired. No, I will get you fired." I heard Ken scream at the officers. I had my window ajar, listening to the confrontation. "Sir, we need you to answer these questions, otherwise further investigation will take place and we will get a warrant." "I cannot believe this. That man does not own all of the land between our two houses and had the cheek to build there. So yes, I removed the obstruction on my property." "Okay, sir, that's all for now," I heard as Ken turned and slammed his door, clearly not happy with how the tables were turning. It's clear to me now that he thought he would manage to coast through on his business presence and not face any consequences. Through the police investigation, property surveyors came around and remeasured everything at both of our houses, and they also checked off other categories on their list, just generic property maintenance. The whole ordeal took days, and in the end something quite surprising came out. The surveyors noticed an anomaly in the ground where our property dispute was taking place. After doing some digging, literally, they discovered that Ken had been dumping toxic waste from his business beneath the ground for years. He made a tunnel from under his fence and hollowed out a large patch of the ground to fill with said waste. And from what the surveyors were saying, my garage could have easily been too heavy for the ground and caused it to collapse under the pressure, so if anything, I'm glad that did not end up happening. During his trial, Ken was charged with illegal dumping of hazardous waste as well as multiple accounts of vandalism. He got a prison sentence and was fined $20,000, which paid for a brand new garage. He also had to cough up funds to get toxic waste specialists in to remove the waste and then patch up the hole, securing the ground. And as a cherry on top, when he is out of prison, he will be forced to relocate elsewhere. Good riddance. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. And by the way, if you have watched until here, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously in regards to beating the stupid algorithm. So, some time ago I used to work in a medical specialty office. It was ID or infectious disease as a medical assistant. Sidebar, I used to work in the food industry and was always told that I couldn't ever contribute to society or do anything meaningful with my life. While I absolutely loved working as a chef and baker at the time, I wanted to do more with my life and prove to myself that I'm not as useless as people made me out to be. Not that I believe that for 1 second, but in my culture, if you are not a businessman or a doctor, you're lower than everyone else. It's pretty terrible, but that's how the culture is. I now live in the US and it's been pretty good. Back to the story though, I had graduated top 3 in my class and was certified through the AAMA and scored in a 90th percentile, so I knew my stuff. Anyway, I've never worked a white-collar job in my life, so I was afraid that I would seem out of place. I did my externship at this ID clinic in my town and they loved my interpersonal skills. They loved my work and stated that I would be offered a job at the end of my externship. I was elated. I was so happy to have a job secured and have a foot in the door to the medical field. It turns out, my blue-collar experience helped me relate with a lot of our patients and they appreciated my work more for it. As my time went on, my experience working in the medical field became less about the money and more about the people I can help with my direct patient care. They were not just charts, MRNs, medical record number for those non-medical folks, and diagnosis. They were Jeff, who ran the local farmer's market, or Meg, who worked with kids at the Y. I cared for my patients and our repeats would always look forward to coming back to see me and chat. I loved working with my patients. So then, at the end of my externship, I was extended an offer of employment for a decent amount of money. It was more than my other classmates were offered at their practices, but still not a whole lot. And then I took it. I was to be the medical assistant in charge of direct patient care. This meant checking in, rooming, dealing with prescriptions, performing and searching for labs, packing wounds, and doing dressing changes. Being officially a part of the office now, I was determined to work my ass off and show myself and my colleagues that I could do it. I continued to do my work and care for patients, however, over time I would notice certain things that were not in my job duties that I could do that would help care for the patients. Certain things like calling their doctors for updated orders or checking for records from local hospitals. Also, helping patients find good home health or SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, generally the medical scheduler's job. This also included looking into insurance coverage, billing, and checking referral statuses, referral coordinators, among other things. Doing these tasks meant a bit more work on my end, but also meant the best care that I could offer for my patients. This went on for a year, and my patients were happy and willing to come to appointments. Apparently, not a whole lot of people like to come to a building that has the words infectious diseases in big print on its side. Then one day, out of the blue, I'm called into my supervisor's office. Young, naive me thought, oh great, they see how hard I'm working and I'm finally getting recognized. Maybe they will promote me to lead. Nope. My boss, Shelly, told me that I'm working too hard and sticking my fingers into too many pots. I asked where this was coming from, and she stated that I was staying more than 5 minutes late too many times, and it's because I'm doing too much work. She said that we cannot keep paying you all this overtime. I think I was maybe taking 30 minutes overtime at most. She said that is still too much, I'm doing too much work. I was baffled, absolutely stunned. I thought I was doing the practice a service, but she undermined the entirety of the last year's hard work I put in. I was frustrated and a bit upset, but tried my best to remain professional. So I asked her what she would like me to do, and the next words out of her mouth were ones that she would come to regret. Well, I see you're doing a lot of tasks that are meant for other positions. Maybe you should stop doing those and just stay in your lane. She then proceeded to write me up for trying to abuse the time clock. Insert Jim Carrey, alrighty then, and cue malicious compliance. I asked her to send me a list of exactly what my job duties are, which she was happy to do. It listed most of what I was originally meant to do, except it did not include dressing changes and packing wounds. I saw this and immediately knew this would be trouble for my boss. You see, she was the only other medical assistant on our end of the office that was certified to deal with minor wound care and dressings. At that point, since I was the main contact for patients, that would fall onto her plate. So I told each of my patients that I won't be doing any of that extra work because it goes against the practice wishes, and I was told not to. All of them understood, but it's tough to get patients to keep appointments when things are delayed. Not long after the order was issued, I got my first page for a wound pack. Excellent. One thing to note about my boss is that she absolutely abhors feet. And one thing to note about infectious disease clinics is that we dealt with a lot of diabetic foot infections. At least 2 or 3 a day. Basically, the doc wants to see how it's healing, so he removes the wrap and unpacks the foot, spends a little extra time with the patient, and now has to get to his next appointment. I'm paged by the doc to pack the foot, wet to dry. No problem, doc, let me get Shelly for you. He gives me kind of an odd look, but continues to his next appointment. Shelly then gloves up, and as soon as she passes the threshold of the room and notices it's a diabetic foot, is holding back her gags and immediately is sweating. I pass by the room and she asks for my help. As calmly as I could, I turned and said, "Sorry boss, packing wounds is not on my list. Cannot do it. Just staying in my lane, by the way. The 2 o'clock in 3 is a through and through foot infection. Probably should get that packed soon too." I'm glad we were wearing masks because she couldn't see the massive crab-eating grin I had on my face throughout that whole encounter. She tried to write me up about disobeying superiors, but I had spoken with my GM and she was behind me. Instead, she ended up getting written up for trying to put wound packs back on my list after she told me that I did too much work. She ended up having to do part of the medical scheduler's job, part of the referral coordinator's job, and part of the billing officer's job, as she had to let go one of our front desk staff because there was not enough work to go around. There was plenty of work, I was doing it. She did not last long after that, the burnout got to her and she stepped down from her supervisor position 4 months after that. They ended up hiring another super and I left the practice shortly after I got the vid. They told me to come back into work after 3 days and still were very symptomatic, so I told them I would not endanger my patients like that and to shove it. Last I heard, they have an entirely new front office staff and they are perpetually short-handed. Well, they should have let me drive my own path instead of staying in your silly lanes. And yeah, ripe stars, that's certainly a first for me when bosses complain that you work too much and that you are too useful. I guess there is a first for everything. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So I'm a 33-year-old man and my wife is 27. Since the start of our relationship, my wife has been very particular about how things get done and tends to believe that she knows the one true correct way for anything related to anything. She has admitted that she can be a control freak. While this bothers me, it has never been a true deal breaker in our relationship. Very often when I do just about anything, whether it be a household chore, assembling a piece of furniture, taking a picture or writing a presentation for work, in a field where I have a master's degree and she has no formal education, she will do this thing where she will condescendingly say, "You were so close to getting it right," really drawing out the "so close" part. I've told her dozens of times that I would prefer for her to stop because it sounds so condescending, but she insists that she is complimenting me instead. So I do the dishes and place them out to dry in an orientation she doesn't approve of. "You were so close." Next time, put them that way. I take a picture of her. "You were so close." Next time, angle the camera this way. I complete a project at work and show her the results. "You were so close." Next time, write it this way. For the last 2 months, my wife has been undergoing an intensive hiring process for a job in our city. She works in a highly niche field and seldom finds job openings, and therefore she was ecstatic to have the opportunity for a relatively well-paying job doing what she wants to do. She got to the very final stage where the company was considering 2 people, coincidentally the other of whom was her college roommate. Well, on Friday she got the call telling her thanks for her application but blah blah blah, record on file, all that jazz. My wife came to me crying, immediately comforted her and "You were so close," blurted out. Her head whipped up and she asked me what I meant by that. I said she was so close to getting the job but was just a bit off. She immediately walked out to stay at her friend's house where she is currently sulking. She finally sent me a text this afternoon calling me a huge jerk. Was I unnecessarily being an a-hole here? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. How do you judge OP here? Either way, someone on Reddit said, "Not the a-hole, you just confirmed that every time she has thrown that line at you, it was never meant as a compliment. She got a taste of her crappy medicine and did not like it. It's too bad she didn't get the job, but maybe she will realize how awful it sounds to say, 'You were so close.'" Comment number 2, everyone sucks here. Your wife does not even respect you enough to be nice about doing the dishes and to stop using a phrase that you find condescending. But boy, you sure got her good using her own words against her in a very vulnerable moment. Sounds like a happy couple. ETA, after reading OP's comments, he doesn't come off as trying to hurt his wife in retaliation like I first interpreted it. Changing my verdict to NTA. Comment number 3, not the a-hole, your timing may have been a bit off, but you're also not wrong. She was so close to getting the job, also it gave her a taste of her own medicine to feel the shame and hurt from those words. And the next one is titled, Am I the jerk for taking my neighbor's plants? I live next to a couple who I am friendly with, but not much past how are you and chat about things in the neighborhood. Last week I was out for a morning walk and noticed Amber lugging a butt ton of plants from her backyard to her porch. She said hello, so I stopped by to chat and to see if she needed help. It looked like she was starting her own landscaping company. It turns out she finally felt inspired to work on the new garden she's been planning for months. She ripped out everything she currently had and was gonna put it on the curb as freebies. I've always wanted to turn my lawn into a nice garden, so I felt like I struck gold. I offered to pay her because there was a substantial amount of shrubbery, but she refused. I wheelbarrowed everything over to my backyard, brought her some pastries as a thank you, offered cash again or to help with her new garden, but she refused and that was that. I spent the weekend with my boyfriend replanting everything, and our backyard now looks great. Until I get a knock on my door yesterday from her husband. It turns out he said she gave permission for him to tell me this. She struggles with bipolar and was going through a manic episode. There is no new garden that she's been plotting for months, just a bipolar-induced attack on their backyard that she now regrets. She is too embarrassed to talk to me herself. I get it, I struggle with depression up the a-hole, and the fewer people I have to explain myself to, the better, but she wants her plants back. Apparently that garden was her baby, and in a fit of mania, she destroyed it. I am sad for her because crappy decisions when you're in the mental toilet suck, but like, everything is already planted in my backyard, and I'm not willing to put in the effort to dig everything back up. It will look awful, and yeah, that's what they are dealing with now, but it's not my fault. I nicely told him pretty much that, and he just said okay, and he left. Now when I see them, they completely ignore me. I've crossed paths with them 3 times since, and her husband waved, but she did not even look at me. I saw them taking soil and compost bags out of their car today, and Amber just looked really upset and not at all excited to be working on a new garden. My boyfriend thinks I should offer to give at least some of them back because I'm not exaggerating. She gave me a ton of plants. I just don't want her to think that she can be rude to me after her mistake and then get what she wants. Am I the a-hole? And Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think that OP is the a-hole in this situation or not? And then edit, read through the business you all sent me, and I've decided I'm gonna give her a $100 gift card to our local nursery and see if she wants help planting. Someone made a great point that these plants will likely be dead within a week, especially if they get moved again. Comment number 1, I was all very NTA, aka not the a-hole, until you pulled the rude card. She is not being rude, she's embarrassed and now trying to reconstruct what she destroyed. She is gutted. She feels like crap, and while you were under no obligation to return the plants, it would not have been unreasonable to meet her in the middle and let her reclaim her most precious ones. Y'all might have even collaborated on your garden, and you could have had a good gardening ally. You are not technically in the wrong, but your attitude regarding what actually happened sucks. Soft, you are the a-hole for making this about you. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole. I was wavering between no, everybody sucks here and you are the a-hole, but this here sealed it for me. I just don't want her to think that she can be rude to me after her mistake and then get what she wants. Seriously, you just got tons of free plants from your neighbor because she was in the middle of a manic bipolar episode. She's not being rude, she's embarrassed. And also hurt. Her not being chipper and friendly with you does not translate to rude. If you want a decent relationship with her, go buy a nice houseplant and some more pastries and go and give them to her and offer again to pay for the plants. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.